I've got kind of a strange direction to go in this morning, in that this isn't typically what I would start with on a conference with this title, although it does fit. It's just not where I usually would like to start. What I want to do is I want to talk to you about how many of you ever been sailing? Anybody ever been? I'm not a sailor at all. I've been on twice. One was so mellow you almost went to sleep. The other was so terrifying you were afraid you weren't going to die. You know, it was one of those trips. It wasn't that bad for the one sailing, but for the passenger, I didn't know what was going on. And as we're gliding along in the ocean, but I've come to find out that you can actually sail a boat into the wind, which is mind-boggling to me. But by tacking, by the use of the rudder, by use of the sail, you can actually advance against adverse winds. And what I've noticed through the years is that oftentimes where I have a hunger to go is in the direction of the greatest adverse winds. And it's by the position of the heart. Proverbs 4:29 says, "Watch over your heart with all diligence. From it flow the issues of life." It's been a key verse for me since, I think, 1972, if I remember right. It's been a verse that I've pondered and held to. In fact, in raising our children, we raised our children, the discipline was always based on attitude, not just performance. Because if we could catch problems in the area of attitude, then we could actually prevent bad conduct. And it's the same for you and me. If we have that warning light goes off, that the attitude that I'm careless or I'm harsh or whatever it might be, those kinds of things that dial up, when those things they go uncared for, then they actually lead us to things that are just not healthy and poor decisions. So what I've noticed through the years is that I have opposition. The strongest oppositions in my life come from the areas that I'm the hungriest for. Hunger is an unusual thing. Do you know you can't crave sweets unless sweet exists? The very fact that you hunger for something is testimony that it's there. And so the Lord will actually sovereignly just plant dreams, desires in us, waiting to see which ones we will respond to. We can't out-imagine Him, so we can't imagine a relationship with Him that's impossible. We can't imagine a realm of blessing or a realm of breakthrough, or we can't imagine. He's already promised to do above and beyond all we could ask. That's our prayer life, or think. That's our imagination. So His covenant with us is to work outside the reach or beyond the reach of imagination and prayer. And yet we're still called to imagine and to pray. I never feel like I have to comprehend what He's doing or what He's about to do. I just need to be facing the right direction. I just need to be facing the right direction. I need to be leaning into Him. And so what I've noticed is for me in my early years is I never saw healing, for example. I heard about it. I went to 2 or 3 Catherine Coleman meetings, and that was spectacular. My parents would take us there, and that was quite amazing to see her in operation. And I would occasionally see a miracle through some very special person, but it wasn't a part of church life, at least where I was at. And my grandparents were immersed in that, but it just never really caught on. It didn't get passed on. And so I had this ache in my heart as just a young man to see what was on the pages of Scripture actually happen in front of my eyes. And you can only live with theory so long. It just, theory has the potential to excite, but it doesn't nourish. Theory has the potential to draw me into something, but it's up to me to pursue it. It's up to me to go after that. And so Nice to see you, my friend. Apostle. No. I'm so glad to see you. Apostle Maldonado. Wonderful, wonderful man. Glad to hear. We have some of my favorite people on the planet right here in this front row, so I'm blessed to be in this house. So here's the idea, is that the Lord awakens desires in us. We are actually often led into the will of God by desire. We sometimes think of the will of God as being that which He requires of us that we don't want to do, and there are certainly times where He commands us to do things that are very difficult for us to do. But what I've noticed in me is that oftentimes I will actually hunger myself into the will of God. He will awaken something in me, a dream for something. And sometimes it seems about as outlandish as could possibly be. Sometimes it seems like, you read about it in the Bible, but you don't know of anyone who's ever experienced that yourself. And yet that ache begins in your heart. And what's happening, in my way of thinking, and the analogy I want to give you, is that oftentimes He's wanting to see if we're willing to navigate the issues of the heart so that we can sail into the adverse winds. Well, you've never seen that before. That's an adverse wind. Well, that never has happened in your family line. That's an adverse wind. Well, your church is not known for that. That's an adverse wind. All these things, it's not even happening in the earth today. Well, that's an adverse wind. There's all these adverse winds that come at us, and yet the hunger in us remains. And the real test is, what am I going to do with the hunger that exists? Will I allow that hunger to get bigger than how impressed I am with the adverse winds? A lot of people's breakthrough, for many in this room, your breakthrough begins the moment you stop being impressed with the size of your problem. If I am impressed with the size of my problem, and you can tell when you talk to people immediately, if I'm impressed with the size of my problem, then I want to convince you how big of a problem I have. Is your heart still beating? Is there like still a pulse? Everybody's still breathing? Everybody's still alive? Sometimes we are so overwhelmed by the challenge that we have that we've got to convince others how difficult it is. I'm not even sure that's completely wrong, except it's not a place of authority. What happens for me, and I can only talk about my lifestyle, is if I become overwhelmed, overly impressed with the size of my problem, then I will react to the problem. Whenever you react to an error, you create another error. If I react to the devil, then the devil has actually had influence in setting my agenda. He's not worthy of any influence. Jesus didn't react to the devil. Jesus responded to the Father. So no matter what kind of mess I'm in my heart, I'm confused or afraid or whatever it might be, I've got to pray myself into a place of faith so that I can respond with some sort of authority. The Father is so wonderful. He welcomes us in any shape we're in. If I'm bitter, He says, come on in, let's talk. It doesn't matter what condition we are in. He will welcome us into His presence. We just can't leave the same way we went in. I tell our folks, I said, listen, if you get into the presence of the Lord and you leave in the same shape you went in, then you weren't praying, you were complaining. Because he invites us in to actually make an exchange. That's the whole point of prayer, is we exchange. We always exchange up. Come to me, you who are weary, heavy laden, I will give you rest. You give me your stuff, I give you my stuff. Give me your heavy stuff, I give you rest. There's an exchange. And so all encounter, all prayer is to be an exchange. If I come to the Lord with anxiety and fear, He welcomes me. But I can't pray a prayer of authority. I can only pray a prayer of a servant. The prayer of authority comes from a child who knows who they are and who the Father is. So we've been given this mandate that is overwhelming in its scope, in its size. It's beyond anything I could possibly imagine. He actually tells us to pray on earth as it is in heaven. It's a spectacular prayer, but we don't know a lot of what's going on up there. It's got to be better than our best day here. He didn't give us direction in prayer to keep us busy. He's not trying to involve us in righteous activities so that we're busy when he returns. He gives us a mandate in prayer because he is fully intended to fulfill that mandate, to answer the prayer. So I feel like one of our responsibilities in our life is to learn how to actually measure the answer. Almost dropped that one. To measure the answer. Is it measurable? Can you actually measure the effect of an answer? Since that world is a presence-based culture, the answer to that prayer has to become manifest through the realization of presence. There's nothing in heaven separate from his presence. In essence, he is the person of heaven. Abiding in Christ is a foretaste. Everything about his world is related directly to the value for the presence of God, which is everywhere. There's no shadows in heaven because he's everywhere shining at once. So everything is directly connected to, feeding from, inspired by the actual glory of God, the actual presence of the Lord. When we pray the prayer on earth as it is in heaven, it's often tempting to reduce the explanation to that prayer to nice kingdom principles, and I believe in them. In fact, it's one of the things that I study most is the principles of his world, because I monitor those. I monitor in our world, how well are we doing by following these principles, these things that God has established in our life. But those principles, it's like if I want principles without the presence, then I'm wanting a kingdom without a king. Then I'm looking for fruit. I'm looking for results instead of a relationship. And it is a relational kingdom. Everything in this kingdom is relational. Everything is proven in our connection with people. I've told our folks, I don't even need the fruits of the Spirit if it wasn't for you. They understand my third grade sense of humor, so it goes fine there. But the reality is you can actually think you have the fruits of the Spirit. I should say fruit of the Spirit. You could actually think you have them and not, if you're not connected with people. It's the relational component that dials up what's right and what's wrong. The temptation is to run from relationships so we feel better about ourselves instead of to stay in until we get fixed. So here we've got this relational journey that we've been called on, and parts of it are so much more exciting than any of us deserve. To see things happen that we ached for, at least for me in my childhood, I would think of things and dream of things and hear of stories and always wondered why they never happened around me or in my day or in America or whatever it might be. You'd hear of it in Africa or Brazil or somewhere, but not here. And to see some of those things start to happen now. I was in a conversation. Bob Jones died 3 years ago. He was a good prophet, friend of ours. He died 3 years ago this last Valentine's Day. It's interesting, the Lord, he went to heaven in 1974 or sometime, and the Lord asked him one question. He said, "Did you learn to love?" And sent him back to earth. And so if you knew him, he was absolutely a lover of people. He just loved people. And in honor of his quest to learn to love, the Lord took him home on Valentine's Day. That's pretty cool. Only Jesus and Bob Jones could pull that one off. I received a phone call from Bob one day, and the only time I had ever heard him panicked. Panic maybe is too strong of a word, but it's close enough. And he just had this encounter with the Lord. And he had a warning for me, not of conduct, but of this assault that was coming against me and what I needed to protect myself in. At Bob Jones' death, I was at Morning Star to honor his passing and was with a lot of other folks for the memorial service, the funeral. And we sat at a table afterwards and just spent a lot of time just kind of having fun with some friends, with Rick Joyner and Bob Weiner and Mike Bickle and some of these guys. Were sitting around the table and just kind of talking about stuff that we've been experienced of late. And Bob Weiner, we were talking about the difficulties. We were talking about, it wasn't a morbid conversation because I actually don't enter those conversations, but it was more of a matter of fact, some of the stuff that's going on. And we were talking about some of the things in the media and stuff that comes against us. And Bob Weiner says, "Oh yeah, I call that income tax." I said, I stopped the conversation. I said, "What? Income tax?" He says, "Yeah, the more income, the more tax." That made sense. That actually helped me so much to realize we cry out for breakthrough, we cry out for blessing, and there's a tax. See, some people can't have more breakthrough because of their inability to survive the tax. Look at this passage in Mark 10. It just reveals a principle. It's not the subject for today, but it's worth looking at. I would actually love sometime to talk just about the subject of finances as Jesus dealt with it here in chapter 10. Let me just get you right to the point, to the punchline. Verse 28 of Mark 10. Peter began to say to him, "See, we have left all and followed you." So Jesus answered and said, "Assuredly I say to you, there's not one who has left house or brothers or sister or father, mother, wife, children, lands for my sake and the gospel's, who shall not receive 100-fold now in this time, houses, brothers, sisters, mothers, children, lands, with persecutions, and in the age to come eternal life." This is a bizarre story to me. It's a bizarre story because Jesus just got through telling them it's hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom. And the disciples are freaked out because they're considering themselves to be rich. They're wondering then who can be saved? And Jesus says, well, with man it's impossible. With God all things are possible. And then Peter goes, "We left everything for you." And Jesus said, "That's right." Picture it this is the way I picture it. Get my hotel key out of there. Peter says, we gave up all of this for you. And Jesus said, "That's right. And I'm going to add 100 times as much what will kill you back into your life." It's like this was never the problem. It was getting the heart to the place of absolute surrender so it could handle the issue. 100 times as much. And he said, with persecution. That's the phrase I want you to see, with persecution. I personally believe that this financial subject that Jesus was dealing with is actually representative of our entire life. Jesus warned about the danger of the love of money. What happens when I throw this on the ground? It turns into a snake. And what does Jesus say? He says, pick it up by the tail. In other words, hold it in a way of obedience, because it's only then it won't turn and bite you. And he adds a sober-mindedness to blessing. Blessing is to be celebrated, rejoiced over, the breakthroughs, the miracles. But look at history. Not everybody responded well to breakthrough on their life. They began to just a little compromise here, a little compromise there. And because the anointing was so strong on their life, they felt it was approval for their conduct, and it wasn't. So the Lord he's trying to woo us into not being a results-oriented people, but being a relational people, being a presence-centered, presence-focused people. It means that we respond in certain ways to a problem that we wouldn't have otherwise, because we can just sense that presence. We sense that heart of God regarding a situation. And I said all that just to get you to this place, to just talk to you about the 4 things that are the adverse winds that I see that we have to face. And I'll just mention them quickly. Disappointment, loss, criticism, and betrayal. Disappointment, loss, criticism, and betrayal. Nobody likes to experience any of those things. No one, none of us are in this to experience crisis and trauma and all that stuff. And yet we live on planet Earth. We live with people, broken people living with broken people, and sometimes we rub each other the wrong way. There are certain things that happen. Sometimes there's a part of the body of Christ that will rise up in strong opposition to what it is that you stand for. And these are just things that we face. If you want to get depressed, look up your name on the internet, and that will take you quickly to a level of depression you've never known before. It's just not smart to voluntarily look for that stuff, But here's my approach. Here's what I wanted to talk to you about this morning. I had it in my heart last night. I had it in my heart when I woke up this morning, and I thought, man, I'd sure rather do something else. But let me just talk to you about this, because I think this cultivating revival thing has a whole bunch to do with how we navigate what comes our way. And I want to be the sailboat that through the attitude of heart, through my actions and my heart posture, can sail against adverse winds. And so there's disappointment. Everybody in the room has faced disappointment. What do you do with disappointment? If I don't trust him, if I don't fully trust him in disappointment, he cannot trust me with fulfilled dreams. See, if we don't trust in the negative, then we won't be trustworthy in the positive. The Lord is actually measuring us. I don't know if you realize that. He's measuring us, not to shame us, not to criticize us, not to punish us. He's always measuring, testing us to see what weight of glory can we live under without it crushing us. Because see, his desire is to fill the earth with the glory. The church is to be the carrier of glory into the earth. The glory is that weighty presence of God. The manifested presence of King Jesus is to rest upon each person until their countenance actually reflects his nature and his person. This is his design. This is his desire. But glory is also the word weight or weighty. It's heavy. And that weightiness of God's presence establishes a sanctified life, but it crushes an unsanctified life. And so the Lord measures what we can carry without it breaking what he was building. Does that make sense to you? So he's constantly releasing. He'll bring, for example, he'll bring a certain church into an extraordinary miracle. How do they tell the story? How do they tell the story? Are we at the center of it? Is Jesus at the center of it? It's not punishment oriented. It's just this is where we choose to level off in our development. It's where we choose to level off in our own personal growth. What can he trust me with? And he's constantly measuring to see what can I carry in a way that still continually glorifies him but establishes me. This is his heart. And so when disappointment comes, I don't believe God is the author of any of those things. We live in a real world with pain and difficulty. And when disappointment comes, what do? It's the point where I turn and I strengthen myself in the Lord. It's where I learn how to make up for what I didn't get in the fulfilled dream, in the breakthrough. The Lord has designed you. By nature, you were designed to be a dreamer and to see dreams fulfilled as a part of your pathway to joy and fulfillment in life. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but desire realized is a tree of life. 2 trees in the garden. One you can eat, one you can't. The tree of life is mentioned in Genesis, Proverbs, and Revelation. What was, what is, and what will be. The tree of life is a place you can feed from right now. But what is it? Hope deferred makes the heart sick. Desire realized is a tree of life. It's very similar. To me, it's a sister companion passage to John 16, where Jesus turns to his disciples and he says, "You've not asked the Father anything in my name up till now, but you're about to ask the Father in my name, and whatever you ask him will be done for you, that your joy may be full." Joy. You were designed to live in fullness of joy. How is that supposed to happen? Through answered prayers. You were designed to live with the full impact of the tree of life in the here and now. How is that supposed to happen? By fulfilled dreams. There's a connection in that you and I were designed, called into being, if you will, created for this purpose, to co-labor with God and let our desires be actually shaped by the relationship we have with him. He's looking for a people he can trust. He can trust their desires. Because he's made this covenant. Anything you ask for. He's God. He always reserves the right to say no to any prayer that I ask that undermines my purpose. But other than that, he is looking for a partnership role with people made in his image who have become worshipers by choice. And in that context, we have this partnership with the Lord where he's looking to fulfill dreams. He's looking to fulfill the desires, the outrageous requests. There's nothing too big for him. Sometimes I think what we pray reveals our measure of how big we think he is. I can't stretch him too far. I can't request something that is too big for his power, his capacity, his compassion. So he's trying to woo me into a relationship where fulfilled dreams, answers to prayer is a part of my life, and it keeps me healthy, spirit, soul, and body. Prosperity of soul. That affects everything about us. Is supposed to, in part, be derived from answers to prayer. It's supposed to be the result of the tree of life, the fulfilled dreams. The servant doesn't think that way, but the son does. And oftentimes the Lord refers to us as sons and daughters, but we still have the mindset of servants, of slaves. And what he's trying to do is reveal his goodness in such a measure that we get drawn out of that mindset of slavery in an inappropriate way. He's trying to woo us into a confidence in his heart for us. And so these tests that come our way are constantly measuring to see what weight, what measure of glory can we carry? What measure of glory can a church, an entire church family actually live under without it leading to self-promotion? Without it leading to that superior thing, well, we have this going on and you guys don't. It's the whole thing in Luke 9 that the disciples battled. You know, we told they were casting out demons in your name, and we told them not to. They're not one of us. What right do they have casting out demons? There's that segregation thing going on. And Jesus just nailed it. He went after that. And sometimes that exists. So he's in us. So he's trying to see what measure of glory can I carry. And so the challenges that come my way are, number one, in disappointment. If I can trust him through disappointment, maintain my confidence in his goodness, I come out the other side with honest breakthrough that is for the glory of God. The second area is the whole issue of loss. I know everybody in the room has experienced loss. It may be a financial loss. It may be of a loved one, a friend, a relative, a dear one. There's losses. There's losses in life. And what I found is if I don't trust him in loss, if I don't know how to come to him when I am broken, hurting, confused, wounded, all the stuff, then he can't trust me with gain. The measure of gain he wants to release over my life is actually measured once again. Measured. What can he carry? Because he looks at me with compassion and he wonders, what can he carry? When my dad died, all of our family was around his bed when he died, and he had moved to our city to help us with the revival we were experiencing. And he got sick, and 6 months later he was dead. We were all in the bedroom with him when he died. And you remember these kinds of painful losses. He was young for our family. He was 75, and all our family members lived into at least the upper 80s, if not the upper 90s. And he was the healthiest of all of them. And he just got hit at the end, and he died within 6 months. And I remember, you've got confusion, you've got the why, you've got the pain of loss, you have the disappointment, there's no question. You've got the guilt. What if I would have done this? What if I would have prayed that way? All this stuff just piles up on us. And the way I responded to those things is each of these things, confusion, guilt, shame, all this stuff, to me they were like sticks of incense that I just brought close to a fire. And then in that place, I would give him worship and thanks in the middle of my biggest disappointment and loss. And what I consciously did is if I had that stinging feeling, God, you didn't answer prayer, then what I'd do is I'd give him the offering that says, God, you always answer prayer. You are so perfectly faithful and true. But your dad wasn't healed. God, I exalt you for being the healer. You made the payment for every broken situation to be healed. By your stripes, we were healed. And so you take the pain. It doesn't help us to put it away. It doesn't help us to pretend it doesn't exist. Faith doesn't deny a problem's existence. It only denies it a place of influence. And so you take the painful parts and you hold them close, not as a basis for criticism or complaint, but to flavor the worship. Because in heaven, I won't have any pain. I won't have any confusion. I'm going to worship him throughout eternity. But this particular gift, I can only give him now. I'll never have a chance in all of eternity to give him that offering. That offering is only a here and now offering. So I have to grab my moments. I've got to grab my moments. Paul said it. He says, I know how to abound. I know how to be abased. In all things, Christ strengthens me. What's the point? All of us know we need strength when a problem is going on. But he realized he needed strength when he was in bounty. So the Lord takes us into these situations, or these situations come our way, and he helps us to navigate through them so that we can respond well. So we have the issue of disappointment, we have the issue of loss, and the Lord is wanting to bring gain into my life, into your life, more than we wanted, if you can imagine that. He wants the gain in anointing. He wants the gain in security and breakthrough and ministry and family and legacy, all the things. He wants it more than any of us do. He longs for that, but he's looking for a platform to build on, and that platform is the ability to navigate difficulty. So we've got disappointment, loss. The third one's criticism. I heard somebody say a while ago, if you don't want to ever be criticized, then just don't do anything. Especially now with the internet where everyone is an expert, self-ordained expert. Criticism is never fun. Occasionally there are elements of truth in the criticism, so it's just wise to pay attention to that. But if it sends you in a downward spiral, it's not healthy, it's not right. Criticism, especially the kind that is so cruel and so misgiven. You know, I mean, anybody here in the front row, probably everybody in the room knows what that's like, but when your name becomes a little bit more known, you become a meal that people love to consume. And if you don't know how to navigate that well, here's what happens for me. I had an experience this last year in which someone was writing a book, and part of the book was written against us. And I mean, that's happened before. Somebody criticized us once. They said that Bethel is just another Disneyland. And I thought, and the problem is? They call Disneyland the happiest place on earth. I think they need some competition. So that's what I'm there for. So anyway, this particular author, I found out about it, and I happened to know him, so I wrote him. And I want you to understand my heart on this. I wrote him, and I thanked him for writing the book. And I told him I welcome the release of this book. I said, but make sure you put my name in there. Don't say a pastor in Northern California. And make sure you mention the name of the church, Bethel Church, please. I said, I welcome the book, not because I believe it will help the body of Christ, but I know that I can't get to where I want to go unless I know how to navigate adverse winds. So I sincerely view it. I don't like it. It's never fun. But if God doesn't defend me, I'm not worth defending. I mean, anything that I end up with in defending myself is self-promotion. And whatever you obtain through self-promotion, you have to sustain through self-promotion. It's like a beach ball that has a hole in it. You just got to keep pumping it up. You just got to keep pumping it to keep it full. It's no fun to work that hard. God protects what he promotes. And so, ongoing story, long story short actually, would be that through dialogue with this individual, he actually repented and apologized and rewrote the entire chapter. I ended up endorsing the book. It's a great book. But the point I wanted to make was, how do you face the stuff that comes your way that's not any fun? You know, the retaliation. You know, well, you made that up about me. I know facts about you, and I mean, it's all that garbage. What it does is it takes us out of our place of authority into a place where we have no supernatural power. We only have human power. And we can use it to manipulate. We can use it to persuade people around us. And it's just not healthy. And the Lord is looking for this. We want a greater revival. We want greater breakthrough. I've seen more than I've seen. Goodness, I've seen more stuff happen than I ever thought I'd have the privilege to see. And now, actually, in most any given week, I see more than I thought I'd see in my lifetime. So I'm so thankful, but I also know there's so much more than what we have. I mean, I'm glad, and I am truly thankful, but I just get before the Lord and say, God, I just read it in history. I see there's more than what we have. And you said the glory of the latter house is to be greater than the former. It's not going to end on a down note. It's going to end on a high note. So God, you've got to do more. Do whatever you need to do in me. Just make sure that I can at least be involved. It doesn't have to center around me. I just want to be in the room. And I just want to be a part of what you're doing. And so these things come at us to kind of disjoint us, to pull pull us out of a joint. We're still alive. We just can't function. We can't function because we got hammered with disappointment, loss, criticism. And we just don't know how to function well when we're supposed to be contributors. If I can't be trusting God in the middle of being criticized, then he really can't trust me with a level of praise he wants to direct my way. And I know it sounds awkward for us to be praised, but it's what he does. What do you think he did when he said, "Well done, good and faithful servant"? What do you think he did to the centurion when he said, "I haven't seen faith like this in all of Israel"? He's constantly picking out these things, and he's applauding them. He's celebrating. I don't know what you do with that, where Jesus, who is God, is stunned by the measure of faith in someone. I mean, just the fact that you can impress God. Wow. It's possible to impact God. Here's one for you. Do you know that Jesus is called the Son of David throughout all eternity? What kind of impact did David have to have on the heart of God to have God say, "I'm going to call my son your son"? I don't know. I've been reading through 1st and 2nd Kings in the last week or two, and how many times he says, "I would wipe you out if it weren't for your father David." Isn't that amazing? And the guy, the guy's alive like 300 years after David. Your father David. Don't you mean great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather David? It was something about the mark that this man left on the heart of God, that God sovereignly invaded situations he would not have invaded if it were not for the faithfulness of this one man. And so I'm thinking part of the responsibility of maturity is that you live for a generation you won't see. A righteous man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. The impact is that if I'm going to live righteously, I will make decisions that will benefit a generation I'll never see. That's the responsibility. The me now culture that we live in, the pleasure-oriented culture that we live in right now has everything happening now and happening for us, for you, for me. When a momentum has to be established in this relationship with God, where he actually favors people in our family line 100 years from now, simply because we had a place in God. We found this place in God where we faithfully sought his face and gave ourselves to him. See, in eternity, we will look at that, and those are the things that will matter most, is that I paid this price. I was criticized here, but I brought peace into the situation. And for some reason, God said, he's going to bless my grandson because of that choice. If I can't handle criticism well and just give it as an offering to him, then I can't be trusted with praise. A lot of believers don't know what to do with praise anyway. Maybe we should learn how to do that one well. Someone sings a nice song, we go and say, "Man, you did a beautiful job." And they say, "Oh, it wasn't me, it was Jesus." And I'm thinking, it wasn't that good. It was good, but it wasn't that good. So what you do is you get your junk, the criticism, the stuff. If you let it weigh on your heart, it'll rob you of faith. It'll actually work against your identity. That's the target. Hath God said? It's just to ruin our sense of perception of what God is saying, what he's doing, and who he's called us to be. So you give that as an offering, but you also give the praise as an offering. God, look what they gave me. It's impossible without you. You're the one that enabled me to do that. You gave me the favor. You gave me the gift. It's entirely yours. And you give it. People who don't know how to receive honor may not have any crown to throw at his feet. So the last thing is betrayal. So we've got disappointment, loss, criticism, and betrayal. Betrayal's the roughest because you really can't be betrayed unless they got close. Anyone who betrays you that's at a distance, that's not betrayal. That's just criticism and whatever. But betrayal just implies that somebody got close. And the betrayal is the hardest thing to navigate. Jesus, of course, did just that. He, on the night in which he was betrayed, he took bread. And he broke it and he gave it to the 12 disciples. The thing that wrecks me in this story is it was the night he was betrayed. In the night he was betrayed, he was still serving his disciples. He's face to face with what's about to happen. He knows what's about to happen. And yet in that moment, he is still serving the people around him. There might be a clue there how to navigate betrayal. You know what happens to me? If I distance myself from people, I get alone, I'm scary by myself. And unless you're much more powerful than I am, I tend to start wondering and questioning and thinking, what should I have done differently? What did they do? What should I do now? How should I get back? How should I? All this stuff. But when you're in a place where you can actually serve and you can just love people, just never, you never lose track of who you are. You're a servant of the Most High God who gets to bring life to other people. There's something about being involved in the anointing that keeps us transformed. Let me throw out a concept here. Saul, of course, was on a couple occasions, I think it was 3 occasions, went to be with the prophets. And it says the Spirit of the Lord came upon him and turned him into another man. It's a great story. It's just tragic he didn't stay there. But the fact that he didn't stay in that place of being transformed wasn't the fault of the Spirit that came upon him. It was the fault of this man's heart who determined to do his own will. But the great picture in this story is that the Spirit of the Lord came upon him and turned him into another man. What do I mean by that? A lot of our transformation actually comes in the anointing. It doesn't come because we're self-determined. It doesn't come because I've got great discipline. I think discipline is important. Discipline, personal discipline enhances what God is doing in me. But the transformation takes place in the glory. You know, we watched it years ago. We just see people that would have, you know, they would be in such a mess and God would encounter them. And I don't know what happened, but they got up different. They just got up different. They got up different. All the issues just seemed to be broken off. Doesn't mean they didn't have other challenges in life, but it just seemed that the things that made that person not fun to be with was absolutely transformed with a divine encounter. It was the encounter with God. Why? It's the glory. The Spirit of the Lord came upon Saul, a man who is hunting after David to kill him. He has murder in his heart. And the Spirit of the Lord comes upon him and changes him into another man. Church discipline is a real touchy subject, touchy in the sense that there's no pat answer. As leaders, we're always just trying to do whatever's best for people. But don't use this as a template. I'll just tell you a personal experience. I had one of the guys that was fairly high up in our leadership years ago that really blew it. It wasn't a moral thing, but he just really, really, really made some poor choices. And so he had real strong ministry, a lot of gifts, a lot of stuff that he did very, very well that we really benefited from. And so I removed him from all ministry, which I felt I was supposed to do. And there are times where I'm certain that's what you're supposed to do. But in this particular case, I'm going to guess now, maybe a month after I removed him from all ministry, I was contemplating that verse that the Spirit of the Lord came upon him and turned him into another man. And I realized I can't remove him from his place where the anointing comes upon him and changes him. I've got to do something to keep him in a place. I don't want to give authority, but I do want to give a place where this man can serve, where the Spirit of the Lord will come upon him and change him. And I called him back into my office. I said, listen, we're going to have a little change in our plan here. And I released him into certain aspects of ministry that he was very gifted and very good at. They weren't positions of authority. It wasn't, he was very repentant, so want to make that clear. But the point I'm trying to make is I had this conviction of the Lord that if I remove him from everything, I will remove him from his own breakthrough. If I just have him sit on the sidelines, that's not healthy. It just wouldn't work in this situation. I could tell it. And I had this conviction of the Lord. I needed to change the mandate on this guy's life. And in doing so, brought him back into a place where he could serve until he became healthy and whole and trustworthy again. Betrayal. If I don't trust the Lord when I'm betrayed, how many of you have found out that sometimes you're going through what feels like betrayal, that after you get all the information, it actually wasn't. It was just a stupid mistake by a friend. Does that make sense? Nobody agrees with me. Well, it's all right. I'm making my confession to you. Some things feel like real betrayal, but after you walk through it a while, you realize they weren't betraying. They're just being dumb. Yeah. But what's betrayal for? I don't know that. If I don't know how to trust him in betrayal, I don't know that I can be trusted with the loyal friends God is wanting to insulate my life with. Not sure I'll steward them well, because you actually steward friendships. You steward people. We are stewards of one another, and how we honor, how we treat, how we sow into, how we celebrate, draw from, release into ministry, empower. All the things that we do in our relationships, these things are essential for where God is taking us, is to know how to celebrate another person, celebrate their breakthrough. And the loyal friends that God has designed, the human body is the perfect example of what God intends. He intends all the members to be connected and contributing. If these parts of my body don't contribute to one another, they die. They only stay alive because they contribute. Ephesians 4 says that which every joint supplies. Every joint is talking about the supply that is released from members of the body through the connection to another member. The whole point is that God is wanting to raise up a mature man, and that is in the spirit of revival to bring transformation to the nation. Let me give you one last concept, and then I'm going to wrap this up. All revival starts with the poor. It may not be economically poor, it may be the poor in spirit, but it always starts with the poor, because they tend to be the ones that respond to whatever God's doing. One of my favorite revival verses in Proverbs talks about, to a hungry person, any bitter thing is sweet. That's revival. Because hungry people aren't restaurant critics. They're not measuring the quality of the meal. They're just happy that they're eating. And those who enter revival honestly enter that way. They enter not evaluating how good the meal is. They're just glad God showed up. Well, it's burnt on the edges. Yeah, you overlook offensive parts when you're hungry. But when you're well fed, I ask for medium, not medium rare. the least qualified people for revival are those who are well fed. I should probably add something to that. Well fed and satisfied. Because it's remaining hungry that enables us to celebrate anything God is doing, even the offensive things. Because he never checks with me first. Maybe he checks with you, but he's never checked with me first. He never says, what do you think about this? I don't know. I don't think that's going to work. All right, last 5 minutes. Revival always starts with the poor. So I want you to picture it this way. A fire burning up a wall, and each layer in this wall is another strata or section, part of our culture, part of our society. And at the very top are the people who actually shape the values for a city, for an organization, for a nation. These are the mind molders. These are the ones who shape culture. Whenever revival fails to reach the upper echelons of society, it's a revival that had a beginning and an end. When it reaches the top is where we get the Reformation, the awakening, the thing that we are all aching for, is it has to continuously burn until it affects every segment, every part of society, until finally it impacts those who God has placed in position. Devil didn't put them there. God put in position to actually shape culture. And so what we want is we want to be able to navigate with excellence of heart. He who is excellent in his work will stand before kings. You want to influence these people? Learn how to be excellent. Excellent in heart. The way we honor is actually an expression of excellence. It's the value that we place in another person. And it's all these components that enable us to be a part of something on the earth that is burning up the wall. It's burning up. It's climbing in its influence, climbing in its reach, until it impacts those who actually are called upon to shape culture and society. I ache for this. This is what I ache for. I'm thankful for what I've seen. I've seen more than I thought I'd ever see. But I have an ache in my heart for what God has done before. It's bizarre to go to Geneva. It's not a godly city. There's some great things going on there, but it's not a godly city. But it's crazy to go there and see a city that still is under the effect of decisions that were made 500 years ago in the Reformation. That is mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. That there could be such excellence of heart, such absolute devotion to Christ, that they could create this culture and this climate that would have an effect on people's lives 500 years afterward. And that was a Reformation that didn't have miracles, signs, wonders. That wasn't the norm in that environment. What could happen now? What could happen now if we, with excellence of heart, navigate criticism? It's just an opportunity for promotion. Loss, yeah, but I can hardly wait till I see the gain. We maintain. You know what keeps us in a place to constantly advance is that we are infected by hope. That hope never dissipates. It never disappears. Why don't you go ahead and stand? We'll pray. Hope continuously breathes into our environment, into our world, into our hearts. One of our young moms years ago came out of a time of prayer with this phrase, and it's marked us ever since. She said, the person with the most hope will always have the most influence. The person with the most hope will always have the most influence. Hopelessness is contagious, but so is hope.